Yo, what's happening, people? Okay, so let's talk about Dave East's mixtape, Karma Free. Now, first of all, shout out to Lucky Ibokwe. I think I've said that right. I think that's a Nigerian name. It looks like it might be a Nigerian name. I might be wrong. I could be completely wrong, but hopefully I haven't butchered it too much. Appreciate the suggestion for this review, Karma Free by Dave East. If there's a album or whatever you want me to review or something you want me to do a video on, let me know. Drop a suggestion. I'll see what I can do, whether it's a hip hop or whatever, I listen to all kinds of music, so whatever you want to suggest, whatever kind of review, whatever kind of video, drop a suggestion. So let's talk about this. This is a mixtape by Dave East called Karma Free. Now I do have to emphasize this is a mixtape and not an album, which is about as significant as it is insignificant, and I'm going to try and explain why. In fact, let me say this first of all. Actually, this is the first time I've ever heard of Dave East. I've never heard of Dave East before it was suggested to me, so he's been around a while. As I know now, he signed to Nas's label Mass Appeal, which I know now. He's got a whole bunch of mixtapes out at the moment, which I know now, and he does have an actual studio album out, which I know now. At the time of recording this video, Karma Free is his latest release, and it's a mixtape. And the reason why it's significant to know it's a mixtape is because there is still a difference between a mixtape and an album. Way back in the day, it was very clear. Mixtapes were very, unprofessional. Some guy recording a few songs in his bedroom with a cheap microphone, and then put it on actual tape, right? An actual tape, and not just upload it to SoundCloud or wherever they upload it to. But it was very much an unprofessional amateur job that you'd put out, and then it would just be yourself promoting it. So you go out to the clubs that you perform at, or the places that you perform. Even on the street, sometimes it's like, yo, I've got this hot new CD, CDs. I've got this hot new mixtape. You wanna get one? Which people have done, and I've seen a few people. It doesn't happen as much in England. I think it happened more in America, at least from what I've read. But I have seen it a few times in the UK, just walking through London, somebody trying to sell their mixtape or mix CD to you on the streets, and that's a tough thing to do, because you literally walk up to people that they don't know who you are, and you're trying to get them to spend something like £10 on a disc that they've never heard of, and you play them like a few tracks, and it's like you're trying to sell it for a tenner or whatever you're trying to sell it for. That's a tough thing, but people try it, and some people do pretty well. So shout out to you guys who've been hustling out there. So yeah, back in the day, that was very much a clear distinction between a mixtape and an album. As time goes on, you've gone from taking beats from a DJ set and doing your rhymes over that. You go from that to doing, say, maybe the royalty-free beats that you found on YouTube, and then doing your rhymes over that. And then you go from that to even getting professionally made beats, or say amateur-made beats, and then putting rhymes over that, and then professionally made beats, as some of the mixtapes are now. Original, professionally made, expensive beats, and then putting your rhymes over that. So the line between a mixtape and an album right now is very, very, very blurred, but it is still worth noting the difference, because it comes down to the scope, or the intended scope, I should say, of the artist. Albums tend to go through a lot more vetting and a lot more of production and executive productions and this, that, and everything before it goes out, and they'll decide, they have a bunch of people deciding which tracks make it and how they tweak it, and because they all it's about trying to, or typically I should say, not always, and it works to various degrees of success, but it's typically about trying to create a very specific theme and feel, and then making sure all the tracks fit into that in some way. Whereas a mixtape is very much, well, as an artist, you decide what you want to put on, and then you put it out, as you want, and then you make the final decisions on what it sounds like, and that's pretty much it. So it's not that it's not. It's not like it's just because it's a mixtape it's going to be bad or it's going to be rubbish. It's just just the scope of it. But it is worth noting that difference. But at the same time, it's insignificant, because ultimately, if you are the listener of something, it doesn't matter whether it's a mixtape, an album, an EP, or an LP, if anybody even uses the term LP anymore, right? But it doesn't matter, because it is down to how does it sound to you, and what is that experience when you press play from the beginning and it stops at the end. What was that experience like? And that's what matters to the consumer. And it's kind of a weird thing, because on one hand, I do feel like the overall listening experience did feel like it was lacking that extra, X factor, or that oomph factor. It did feel like it was lacking to something. Individually, I feel like the tracks kind of pop on their own. At least most of the tracks I feel like kind of pop on their own. But for some reason, we put them together and in the order that they play, and with every, by the time you get to the end of it, it just feels like it's just lacking something. And perhaps if it was an album where it did go through maybe more checks and more veterans and more this and more that and maybe more tweaks and everything else, maybe a few songs get cut out, or that sort of thing, and then maybe when you press play from the beginning and then to the end, it is more of a wow factor, because sometimes the difference between amazing and mediocre is a cut somewhere. Even if it's a great track on its own, sometimes taking that one track out could be the difference between a great album and an okay album. And this being a mixtape, it's like, I feel like knowing that it's a mixtape and being put out as a mixtape, it's like, I kind of feel like I have to allow, I don't have to, but I kind of feel like I should allow that sort of thing, because it's not like if it was an album where it's going for a lot more stuff, then the expectation gets set higher, whereas a mixtape, it doesn't get set as high. So as a mixtape, I guess it's okay. It's okay. I guess it does what it pretty much needs to do, which is to put the tracks out, to get the tracks out into the public domain and have people listen to them. And I guess it does that. You can't really fault it on that. But just going from that and then talking about the listening experience overall, from my point of view, it just felt like it was lacking. And it is a weird thing, because like I say, individually tracks pop, and there are definitely some bangers on this mixtape. Like, standout tracks for me were Thank God, Broke or Not, which I think is just an absolute certified banger, and then Fuck That, which is pretty cool. That one though, I would say, reminds me of a Cannabis track. So for those who know about Cannabis, old school rapper now, I guess, at least he's still around today, but very, very underground, New York rapper as well. He did a track way back in the day called Fuck You, and it had a very similar kind of feel to it, where you had like the guy in the background, fuck you, and then Cannabis kind of rapping to it and stopping where that bit comes in, just as Dave East does with this one. So yeah, very, very similar kind of style, but still a cool track. And then Stone Killer featuring Benny the Butcher, which I thought was a really cool track as well. However, I do feel like I have one particular criticism with that track, whereas that, as cool as it is, and as cool as what I feel like what they're trying to do is, it to me, and I'm guessing, but to me it just sounded like they weren't in the same room at the same time when they recorded it. Now, I get why. I kind of assuming a little bit this was recorded in the last maybe few months or so, considering it was released fairly recently, and with pandemic going on and quarantine and things like that. I get it, right? If that was the case, I get it. I'm not saying it should have been. I get it. That being said, it feels to me, if that was the case, if they did record it separately, I do feel like had they been in the same room at the same time, that track would have just been like, because it feels like, it kind of going back and forth a little bit, but it doesn't feel like they're feeding off each other's energies. And, if you're in the same room with somebody at the same time, you're recording together, you kind of feed off each other's energies. And it creates like this factor where it just goes, it kind of explodes. So it's still a cool track. It just feels like, perhaps if they were in the same room at the same time and feeding off each other's energies, that track would go from a cool track to an amazing track. That's how I feel about it. But I could be wrong. Maybe they were in the same room at the same time we recorded it. Maybe they were feeding off each other's energies, and that's just a result of it. And if that is the case, then yeah, you might want to find some different energy. You might want to find a different energy in that case. But individually, the tracks pop. And I do feel like it's worth checking out. But because overall, the overall listening experience, I personally felt just was lacking something. So now that I know a little bit more about Dave East, just a little bit, I do feel like this is probably not the best introduction to Dave. I feel like maybe his first album, Survival, is probably a better introduction. If you've never heard of Dave East, maybe check out that album first, or maybe going back to his first mixtape called No Regrets, and then maybe checking that out first, and then coming to this mixtape, Karma Free, and then seeing how you feel about it. That's my view. Like, maybe don't start here, start somewhere else and then come here, because it is worth listening to. I do feel like he's doing a lot and he's doing some cool stuff, but it just felt to me like something was missing, or maybe something was there that shouldn't be there. It's not something you could just kind of pinpoint. I feel like that's for the executive producers to figure out, but for me as a listener, it just felt like it was lacking that factor. and perhaps maybe a track should have been, one track should have been taken out, maybe another track should have been added. I don't know, but it just felt like it was lacking that factor. Even though individually, yeah, there's some great tracks on there. There's definitely some bangers on there. Broke or Not, yeah, certified banger for that track, absolutely. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Karma 3 by Dave East. Let me know what you think, if you listened to the mixtape, if you liked it, didn't like it, thought it was a banger, thought it was a wanger, you know, let me know. Let me know if you have any suggestions, recommendations, that kind of stuff as well. But that's gonna be it for the minute. So guys, until whenever, if ever, peace out, y'all.